everyone. Respected director, sir, our esteemed guests, faculty members, and the students of Indian Institute of Management, I am Amit. I, Aman Pandey, on behalf of Center of Entrepreneurship Club, would like to welcome you all to eSummit 2.0, the entrepreneurial summit of IIM Amritsar. Entrepreneurship is not a job or profession, it's a way of life that revolves around problem solving, creating an impact on society, and diverse experiences. Now, I would like to ask Mr. Vaishak and Ms. Sumedha Manotra from MBA07 batch to present on the theme Major Shifts in Traditional Business Practices Driven by Modern Startups.
Thank you, Aman. A very good evening, everyone. This is Sumedha and Vaishak presenting major shift in business practices driven by modern startups. Here are a few trends that's prevailing at present. Lean startups, Tracey model, rediscovering 4Ps. Let's find it out now. Lean startups. The lean startups is an iterative process used for developing products or services based on what people want. The lean startups values experimentation, consumer feedback, and iterative design. It prioritizes speed, aims to eliminate any unknown factors in product or service development, test assumptions, and shorten development cycles. This is done by rapidly testing solutions, getting feedback on them, by measuring their performance, and improving them based upon the feedback received. What is the lean startup relevant to you? It plays to market researchers' strengths. Market research explores, tests, and identifies consumers' needs and pain points. The lean startups works like this too, by continuously testing solutions and applying learnings to better them. Consumer interaction and feedback are crucial, as this provides insights into what improvements must be made. It helps market researchers play a part in innovation for businesses. The lean startups is geared towards NPD, new product development. This means it can help you by testing prototypes and using consumer feedback to optimize them. In doing so, this reduces the chance of a new product failing when it's launched. The lean startup framework works on the build, measure, learn loop. This loop is a learning cycle that involves building ideas quickly into rudimentary products, measuring customers' reactions, and improving the production in 3 key stages. These are build, measure, and learn. Build. Start by creating a minimum viable product, that is the MVP, a cheap and rudimentary version of the actual product or a prototype, which will be used in market testing. But why? By building a minimum viable product, you can quickly test your product and fail fast early on. Failing with an MVP is significantly cheaper than a real product failing. Measure. Once you have an MVP or a prototype, the next step is to test with consumers. This is where market researchers thrive, by using methods such as surveys, data analytics, interviews, and focus groups to gain consumer feedback and insights. But why? This feedback and insights are needed to improve the next iteration of your product. Learn. Once you have identified what works and what fails in the market, you need to improve the product by eliminating pitfalls and leveraging areas of success. But why? This ensures that your new product meets the market's expectations. So, what is MVP, minimum viable product? A minimum viable product is an early product version that has just enough features for early customers to be able to use it. These customers then offer feedback which can be incorporated into future, more developed versions of the product. A successful MVP will reveal customers' real opinions and their desirability for the product. There are 4 key aspects of MVP product development. First is it must be small scale. Next, it needs to be simple. The number of features should be limited. The development of an MVP should be quick and cost effective. So now we will look into the main advantages of lean startup. First is eliminating uncertainty. The lean startup is more than learning fast and failing cheap. It allows you to de-risk your product quickly and reduce financial loss. This allows market researchers to help companies to develop confidence in their business ideas before turning them into products or services. Second is validated learnings. This feedback focused development process enables you to focus your resources in the right places. This increases productivity and allows you to see if the product is viable before investing more time and money into it. Thirdly, systematic approach for innovation. This systematic approach requires fast thinking and action to make for a simple yet efficient model of working. So some of the success stories of lean startups are as follows. First is Dropbox. Dropbox is one of the most well-known lean startup success stories. This popular online service is a sharing platform designed to send files between users, which are too big to be sent as email attachments. Founder and CEO Drew Houston initially launched Dropbox as a screencast. This was their MVP and helped demonstrate why the product was unique and necessary. In less than 18 months, Dropbox list of registered users rose from 1 lakh to more than 4 million. So second example is Buffer. Buffer is a social media content management platform designed to help users schedule and share posts and content. Rather than directly launching the app, founder Joel instead decided to come up with an MVP in the form of a landing page with a call to action button around plans and pricing. This strategy aimed to work out whether there was demand for the app and give the product validation in the form of a user base. Interested customers clicked and continued to click once different package details were added. Over a decade later, and Buffer is a multi-million dollar digital success story. So Slack is another example. Slack is an online messaging platform beloved by businesses. It was initially created as an internal office tool for a gaming startup called Tiny Speck. The company attempted to launch a game called Glitch, but with little success. Instead, they chose to develop their messaging tool as it had proved so popular among staff. It was gradually released to external users and larger groups, using their feedback and thoughts to help refine and review the products. This eventually became the Slack platform we all know and love. According to the estimates by GP Bullhound, the number of monthly active Slack users is expected to reach 79 million by 2025. Now, Vishak will take forward from here.
Thank you, Sumedha. So Agile is another business methodology. Unlike lean startup approach ultimately aims to offer customer satisfaction. However, although similar, the Agile process approach some subtle differences, and understanding them will help you understand which is the best method that you can use. Agile is about helping companies build better products. Lean is about improving the process around their manufacture by developing better quality product. Lean is often applied to a repetitive, predictable process, includes everything from competing a firm online to manufacturing a car. On the other hand, Agile focuses less on the process and more on how we can make a better product. Now let's begin Patagonia. If you ask the 4 Ps, that's at the tune for companies' marketing success. The first thing that comes to each and every one of your mind is product, price, place, and promotion. However, some companies have started to look beyond the horizon, and some are in news in the town. This 48-year-old US-based outdoor retail has upended the definition. That is, this new 4P: people, planet, purpose, and profit. Simply put, it's a purpose-driven philosophy that matches John Elton triple bottom line theory, the 3 Ps: people, planet, and profit. Patagonia is an American company that manufactures clothing and gear for outdoor and adventure sports. Founded by Yuan Choi in 1973, Patagonia has earned a reputation for its upscale clothing and environment-friendly initiatives. What started as a small firm that made tools for climbers now is a gear for travel, adventure sports, and a range of outdoor activities. Now let's look at how they did it. Businesses are built on making more goods, selling all they make, and earning maximum revenues. In an apparent intelligence, it is mainly the norm with the fashion dictating term. But have you heard of a company that is asking their customers not to buy the product? Never, right? Unless, of course, it's Patagonia. The 2011 magazine Friday edition of New York Times caught readers by surprise. Patagonia published a full page ad telling not to buy their products. The advertisement titled, "Don't buy this jacket." explain why consumers should not buy this jacket shown on the image. The ad explained the costs involved at various stages of the manufacturing process, the available to the customer. It talks about how producing the best-selling auto jackets requires 135 liters of water, enough to meet a water requirement of 45 people. The advert also listed several factors: the generation of 20 pounds of carbon dioxide in transportation, and that of two-thirds of the jacket's weight is lost on waste. The primary purpose of the communication was to convince people how buy only what you require. The idea was to change the people's relationship with the clothing, bring conscious consumption to the upfront. The outcome of the advert was a 30% rise in the sales for the campaign. Though that was not the campaign's main intention, Patagonia demonstrated that if you can still make profit when you do good. Now let's look at Trasio, one of the big leaders in buying and upscaling third-party merchants selling on Amazon, another market platform, is announcing a major round of funding today as it continues to expand its ambition. Trasio, the bottom-based startup, has closed to all equity D Series D of over 1 billion funding, a huge infusion in cash that will be used to continue buying more companies. Now they are buying companies at a scale of 1.5 business per week and has around 200 brands in the portfolio. Trasio follows an acquisition entrepreneurship template by surfing the Amazon third-party ecosystem. The company acquires Amazon sellers business and it scales them up. It follows a fast acquisition template to often an exit to the Amazon sellers. Trasio follows a multi-brand and multi-product strategy focused on consumer brands. Now let's look at how understanding what exactly is Amazon third-party business. Of the products sold on Amazon, a majority are third-party sellers, building this product to their stores at the top of Amazon. From there, it starts to a story of Trasio, a company worth of billions, thanks to a business completely built on Amazon third-party sales. Now, how are they leveraging this third-party business? Over the years, third-party sales have grown from 3% to 58% as in the slide. Amazon helped these independent sellers compete against these first-party sellers by investing in offering them selling tools, inventory management, payment processing, shipment tracking, reporting. Programs like Fulfillment by Amazon and Prime membership involved the customer experience by buying from independent sellers, which made the business grow substantially over the years. In 2018, gross merchandise accounted for 58% of the Amazon online sales. In an interview with Quebec from Trasio team, highlighted the opportunity that would help the company get started. It was back in 2018 when launching a business Amazon had become harder compared to a few years before. In addition, Amazon sellers in most skills hit a stagnation at 3 to 5 million stagnant. Then they are facing it very hard to defend. And that's when Trasio comes into the picture. Trasio offers the customers an exit strategy. It is very fast, and now I'm going to explain you how that exit strategy is going to happen. So in 0 to 5, they will actually check if your business is meeting the requirement that they need to buy. And then 5 to 25 days, the due diligence process happens. And then 25 to 35, standard legal procedure happens. Now, after 36, they're closing the deal. Now you might be thinking, how does Trasio make money? Trasio founder Carlos Cashman explained that company buys leading products, usually category leading products, which became the basis of company's acquisition process. As the products are solid and have decent margins, the company have raised over $250 million and raised also debt to finance its operation. According to Cashman, by 2020, the company was low to mid 9 figures revenue. Therefore, Trasio follows an acquisition entrepreneurship path where the company acts as both an entrepreneur and a venture capitalist. Now, I have a question for you guys. Now, there are a lot of, you can see how these new startups and everything follows a lot of innovative and not contemporary, they follows an unorthodox path. So are we still going to follow the frameworks? Do you think these frameworks can actually, so that's a question that is left to you. Maybe you can answer it up. I'm looking forward for an answer. Thank you from our side.
Thank you, Vaishak and Sumedha. It was a wonderful presentation. Now, I would like to call Roop Chandra to introduce our guest for the evening.
Thank you, Aman. Good evening, everyone. So, our keynote speaker of the day will be Ritu Maria ma'am. She is the editor-in-chief for Entrepreneur India Asia Pacific and Franchise India Media, a group company of Franchise India Holdings Limited. She is also the group editor and leads the editorial desk, which comprises business magazines, including Entrepreneur, The Franchising World, and Retailer, together with the digital media arm of entrepreneur.com, franchiseindia.com, wellnessindia.com, indiaretailer.com, and restaurantindia.in. We are honored to have you in our flagship event. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much. And I'm delighted to be here, to be speaking to all of you here at IIM Amritsar. It's always great to be back to the campus and, help educate or talk to students. Obviously, you're building what is the new India that our Prime Minister keeps referring to. And I think if I can add some little bit of knowledge in your initiatives, it would be very helpful. So thank you very much for having me here today. And I've been given a very interesting topic, and I was hearing Mr. Vishak talk about in his presentation about Thrasio, and then of course they talked about Slack and a few other companies which are really global giants. And I think it's very important that we look to these companies, and of course they use unorthodox models, and at the same time they're doing very cutting edge work in terms of rebuilding how businesses are delivered. So Thrasio incidentally is what we see in a legacy world, the Unilever format. So they're building the new Unilever, so to say, and basis upon of what kind of innovation they have done. We also seeing Mensa in India, Goat brands, ChargeBee, and lots of other brands who are doing similar work wherein they are acquiring multiple brands in D2C businesses in their kitty and trying to sort of rejuggle their business, improve their P&Ls, build more branding into the business, and therefore grow this business. So thank you very much for once again for getting me over here. I'm going to sort of talk about my topic, which is about the shifts that are happening today in the business world. And I think from where I'm going to come from is both the way that I have observed these shifts happening. So of course, startups have been the builder of shifts in one sense, but I think the real shifts have really also started happening in legacy companies. So I'm going to go back and forth between startups and legacy companies in the next few minutes, just to sort of build, what change is today happening in the business world overall, and business practices and operations, which is going to be very interesting for all the students out here who are attending, because I think as you're going to plan your careers once you get out of your alma mater, out of IIM Amritsar, how you would conceive or perceive your careers, it's going to be. So I'm going to sort of try to throw some light on how essentially companies are changing the way they work. So I've put together a few slides over here. So if we can please have them, I would request one of you to please share the slides, and if you can sort of control them as I tell you to.
Sure, ma'am.
Bhavya.
So you picked up an interesting topic for me, which is shift in business practices from traditional era to a modern era, more contemporary era that we're living in today. And I think shifts in business practices is something that we are seeing overall, and not just in one place today, incidentally, which I'm going to talk about as we go ahead. Next slide, please. So now, fundamentally, what has really changed in the past few years, and I would say more accentuated during the time of the pandemic since 2020. So on a fundamental level, I think human needs have not changed. We still eat food, we still want to wear good clothes, we still want to go out, we still want to travel. Of course, we have been, asked not to, but nevertheless, it's not something that we would not ever be doing in our lifetime. So we want to do all of that. But I think what has fundamentally changed is the way we want to achieve these things, or the way we want to do these things. When we say that we want to travel, it doesn't mean that we want to really travel 2 hours commute one way and 2 hours commute the other way just to go to office. So those are the things which are changing. And I think the companies who are going to reimagine their business operations around it are the ones who will be performing the best in the next normal. Companies who are able to sort of build their ecosystem around how people would like their needs to be addressed are the ones who are going to be the top winner in the times to come. So I'm going to really talk about how companies are sort of rejuggling their core strategies in order to be able to address these new age needs that we say we want, the customers want, people want, and how they are really building business models and very profitable, very successful business models around it is what I'm going to talk about for the next few minutes. Next slide, please. So the one thing that I would like to sort of first start with is the pivot. And I think companies fundamentally, which I'm seeing are the most successful companies, are the ones that are developing new growth business models, which are outside their traditional core. They are the most significant companies doing some really, really good work out there. Now, let me give you an example of which is close home is probably Zomato. Now, Zomato, when the pandemic hit in 2020, March 2020, and we had like one of the strictest lockdowns at that point of time, Zomato was in trouble because they would not know, because restaurants were practically not functioning. So they did not have kitchens that were made for delivery at that point of time. People were scared to order, cooked food from outside because they didn't know, if they could catch pandemic because of that, or they could catch COVID because of it. So now what does a company like Zomato do, which has a huge fleet of people, a huge fleet of drivers, and what do they do with them? So at that point of time, very quickly, and despite being such a large organization, they quickly pivoted themselves to starting to deliver food and grocery. Now, it was not something that they were used to. They did not understand the fundamentals of the business, but they knew it was the need of the time. And it was also the need of the hour, because that's the only way they could purposefully employ their people, else they would have to let them go. So they decided to do a shift towards it. And it is something that has paid off for them. Though I know that, of course, the founder of Zomato himself has moved out of Blinkit because of some financial wariness over there. But I mean, the fact that they were able to go out and acquire grocers at that point of time was a big deal, because they've realized that the core opportunity of what they are building and what they have fundamentally built from a technology standpoint might be more beneficial in the food and grocery segment. And that is where they have actually the ones in India who've given birth to what you call the quick commerce model, which is the newest form of e-commerce model that we are seeing today. So I think Blinkit, or Grofers, as you probably know that business to be, is giving deliveries in metro cities at least in 10 minutes. So whatever you order from their app, 10 minutes, 9th minute, it is actually delivered to your home. This is the most efficient form of e-commerce that we have seen till now. And I think why a company like Zomato will grow is because they have decided to step outside their traditional core of food service to food in order to grow further. Of course, they came out with their IPO. Now, this is, of course, an example of Zomato, which is a 10-year-old company, always known to be agile and flexible, and always doing things which were a little more ahead of times. But let me give you an example of a Danish company. Now, so there in 2012, there is a company called Danish Oil and Natural Gas, which was on the brink of financial crisis. They were into, of course, black energy, coal primarily, which they had been doing. And it was, so to say, a PSU, public sector unit of the Danish government. 80% was owned by them. And they were in probably the worst financial crisis they had ever been. Now, what does a company typically do when they face a financial crisis? They would typically lay off people. They would wait for better times to come, or they would re-strategize a little bit, and they would fundamentally see that they're able to maintain their growth back. But Danish Oil went and did something very different. First of all, they bought a new CEO, and the CEO was actually a senior executive coming from a toy company called Lego. And what did this guy do? He said that I am going to go on a different mission. I don't want to do reconstruction of whatever is our existing business, but I'm going to build a new business. And from there, he first of all renamed the company as Orsted. And Orsted actually stands for, it's a name of a scientist I think in Denmark, who talked about electromagnetism. So now, interestingly, they decided to, instead of sort of reworking things around their existing business, they decided to find a completely new business from what they had built. It was going to take some massive cost. There going to be a completely new mission that they were embarking upon. But it was also something that they knew internally, that it would probably, if things go right, and if their bets pay off, then they would probably build a more sustainable business in times to come. And it would also fundamentally not just address the issue of energy that the consumers need, but it will also at the same time address the climate change issue, which was becoming at that time and still continues to be a huge, massive issue in Europe and in other parts of the world. So, the company which was in black energy shifted to wind energy, which was a green energy at that point of time. And interestingly, in 2016, they did one of the biggest IPOs of that particular year. And today their net profits are probably have increased by $3 billion per year. And I think now this is an example. Now so I gave you two examples over here. One is of Zomato, which was fundamentally a new company and they pivoted. And second is of Danish Oil, which was a legacy company, and they pivoted. And they both are doing significantly well because of their mindset approach or looking at their business much more differently than what they were used to doing. Now transformation is actually very, it's easier said than done. And honestly, I sort of work on the business side, and I can tell you that transformation is a very loosely used word today, because it's actually getting thrown around so much that it has so much different meanings today for different individuals and companies. But I think, in a world that we're living in, which is full of disruption and there's so much market turbulence, it essentially, transformation has to revolve around unlocking new business opportunities, driving new growth in the organization, and delivering new efficiencies. I would stick to these three things, which are core to any business which is doing a pivot or looking at new growth to happen. And the biggest obstacle of any transformation is the mindset of its people, which says that this is the way things have been done. It's honestly, that is usually, if you ask me what's the biggest hindrance for any growth to be done, it's usually the mindset of the people. Now, several companies who are refocusing the organization have found a bigger goal, as I talked about Danish Oil, was that they have moved their purpose away from shareholders' wealth. What were the organizations always thinking back in 1990s or even 2000? They were always thinking that, is our shareholder wealth growing? Is our the listed value of our share growing or not growing? Is our investors making money or not making money? But today, I think they are focusing to a larger purpose, which is to save the planet, to help the planet achieve the mission, to keep it a green planet, to bring sustainability on the planet. And I think those have become very, very powerful purposes for new growth, new opportunities to be discovered. So fundamentally, the most successful companies are the ones who are good at creating new products. They are good at introducing new services. They are good at finding new markets and new business models, which will then determine its overall success. I'd also like to talk about another company which has done some great work in this area, which is really Netflix. I'm sure all of you watch movies on Netflix, you watch business series on Netflix, but it's little known that Netflix, that was not the original model of Netflix. Netflix was actually supposed to be a company which was made in order to do, they used to do DVD mailing to people at some point of time, wherein people could watch the movies at home. And I think it was in 2013, the CEO, Reed Hastings, said, he told his employees and he told his investors that they were not going to do that side of the business anymore. They were going to produce original content. they were going to produce original series, and which would actually go on to become, they would win Oscars and Emmys and whatnot out of it. So that's the pivot a business made. And today, probably it is one of the most successful companies that we know in the OTT space, which has actually given birth to many other OTT models as well. Next slide, please. Can I request the next slide? So now when the companies really essentially have to transform, you have to become more passionate and you have to become more purpose-driven as a brand, as an organization. So it's really not about I used to at some point of time in 2018 think that if a company really, or you have to be successful in today's time, you have to be a startup. It's really not it. It doesn't matter. Regardless of whether you're a startup or whether you are a legacy organization or a traditional business, it doesn't matter what is your size, what is your performance at any given point of time, but really it's your ability to be able to create a new future for your organization and to be more purpose-driven in your mission to accomplish that. I think that is really the focus. So, I mean, for all of you who are probably going to look at, and this is one question I really get asked a lot by students. I do talks to a lot of business institutions, to a lot of MBA students. And they say, ma'am, is it better to join a startup or is it better to join a large organization or corporate organization, which is 30, 40 years old, 50 years, 100 years old? And I tell them the same thing. It doesn't matter. What you really need to do is what you are going to bring to that organization and how sort of open that organization is towards innovation, to creating new business models, new opportunities. That is what matters. So it doesn't matter whether you go and work for a startup or a corporate. It's going to be about, if that company is open to innovation, then you're going to be able to find your light of the day in that organization. So it's my message to you also. So companies who've been able to do this kind of transformation, who have great passion, they've also got very broad vision. I was talking to Anupam Mittal the other day, who is a large investor, and probably a lot of you are, he's the founder of Shadi.com and an angel investor. And I think a lot of you are seeing him on Shark Tank. And he said, and I asked him, I said, what is it? How is it that you go out and invest in startups? What is it that you fundamentally look for in a founder? He says that in a founder, I look for integrity. And in an idea, I look for how broad-based that market is. Because if you have a broad market, a very, very huge market, even if you make 1 or 2% of change in that business to start with, you are going to have a significantly large business. And the bigger the industry, the more forgiving that industry is to mistakes that you will do in the course of building your business. So therefore, the broader the vision companies have or startups have, they are always going to be more purposeful in whatever it is that they're trying to achieve. And of course, the minute an existing organization broadens its vision, as I told you about Danish Oil or Zomato or even Snapdeal in India, they've all started from a very different area. I mean, look at Amazon. Amazon used to be a book delivery e-commerce company. Today, they're virtually into everything. They're giving you movies, they're giving you an OTT platform, music. They're the largest e-commerce company in India right now. So the minute they increase their vision, their purpose also becomes much, much larger. I mean, would honestly, in the time Jeff Bezos was building Amazon, be thinking about, that because so much of packaging material was going to be used for sending or couriering these things to people, how are we going to make sure that we don't put too much wastage of paper or sheet or cardboard to that? But today, to that effect, they are always looking to reinvent their packaging to be able to not waste too much resources. So, or finding a new purpose also helps. Like, for example, in case of Danish Oil, they went from black energy to green energy. So therefore, their purpose was new, and therefore the way they were building their organization was also going to be very different. And it's the same purpose that you need to sort of dig into the organization to the last mile. Otherwise, whatever purpose you fix, if you sort of only keep it to the above management level, it's never going to be met. Nobody is going to be able to address that purpose. So the next thing I would want to say is that today it's also important to understand that people who are working for organizations, they are very purpose-driven themselves. I mean, as a today as a editor, I'm very conscious about what I write, because I want to make sure that whatever I'm writing about is doing some good to the reader, so doing some good to the society. It never used to sort of strike me. This never used to strike me till about 2015. Till then, I was just producing content which I knew my readers would like, but I would today want to give them a bigger purpose when they read that content. So today people want to make a difference to the society, because everybody knows the cost of living on earth would be impossible. Look at the way we're having pandemics, we are having climate change situations, pollution. I mean, I live in Delhi, and I can tell you pollution is the worst kind of problem that we have right now. We don't want all that. We want, so similarly, organizations, in order to be, they have to build sustainability in the very fabric of their operations if they want to go on. So I think, as I said this earlier also, that you cannot really, the organization's only interest cannot be towards shareholders. It has to be much broader. It has to be more multidimensional and create benefit to all stakeholders. Can we go? So this was more on the macro side. Next slide, please. Where I'm trying to tell you what the organizations of yesterday or of today, the way they are thinking. Now I'm going to talk about how they operationally think a little bit, where I'm going to talk about, what's inside these organizations which make them so successful. So one is, of course, the culture. So they are constantly working on the culture, the kind of culture that they build in their organizations, the kind of missions that their people, so a large company always have a lot of people working for them. So that culture is something that has to be passed on to the last unit working in the organization. And a higher purpose always helps, because there is, it calls for more decision. So it means that, decision making cannot only be in the center, or the central body cannot control all the decision making, but it's really the people who are working on the edges. They need to be able to take decisions for future success. I think it's eventually what I am beginning to see in most organizations is a largely growing ownership culture. So everybody who is working in the organization is an owner of his, or is accountable. He's an owner, she's an owner of whatever work it is that they're doing. It's not as if, you can just walk up to your boss and say, look, I just was doing what it was told to me, and I was following the process. That does not work anymore. So you have to be accountable for whatever outcome that you are bringing, and it is sort of true to the larger mission and the purpose of the organization. And today, I think organizations themselves are changing very fast. So they are not looking, so, back in 90s, I remember, how would people say that, how would they forecast the future? They would forecast the future by looking at the past. They would look at the data of the past. They would look at, the business trends of the past, what made their profits go up, what made their, or what led them to losses. So all the insights for future used to come from the past. But now those insights come from data. They come from analytics that we do on our consumers. We understand the needs of consumer. Organizations constantly go back to their consumers, look for feedback. And that is how we are able to sort of give them really what it is that they are looking for. And I think, as I said, of course, highly networked teams, decision-making authority has to move out of central or core, and we have to sort of go further. So, okay, I'm running short on time, so I'm going to move very quickly on the rest of the content. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is what the new workplace looks like. So the people, of course, the demand of workplaces will be more now. Of course, you are the next people who are going to be working in these organizations. So your work is going to be very complex, to say the least, because the scale of business objectives that they're looking at, it would require a lot of creativity and critical thinking, constant digital upskilling to happen to solve the complex problems. And there's a new culture of work that is coming up, which is called WeWorking, which means that small and flexible teams are going to work on certain projects within the organization. So there's going to be, so your counterpart or your might actually be sitting in US, Europe, Africa, and there might be you sitting in India or somebody sitting in Singapore. So everybody is going to be working together for this one single project. So it's going to be small autonomous teams and very high performing teams that are going to sort of be doing the assignments that are given to them. So repetitive work is essentially going to finish in the next 10 years. You will find that the work which was either telecalling or which was repeating some kind of manufacturing process which requires just same kind of production process, those jobs are going to vanish completely. In fact, you might think that because the work is going to be highly cognitive in nature, so smart machines will actually be your co-workers of the future. Next slide, please. So essentially, you have to now be a lifelong learner. You have to be a student at any point of time in your life. And it's not just everybody is going to be a student. So whatever age, there would be no age to go back to college, to go back to university, to do an online course. And I think it's also a great time for institutions to think this is a once in a generation chance for them to sort of shift their physical and virtual space, rebuild it, and to be able to give the best to the students who come to them, because now the students are not going to be from probably 18 to 30. Let's say for IIM, it's going to probably be 18 to 80. Anybody could be looking up for any kind of upskilling. Next slide, please. So the work-life balance is, of course, going to be the very dark side that we might see coming out of all of this, because now people will not know when to switch off. Those things are going to be something that would need to be addressed. And I think technology, we will have to rely highly upon it to help us to save a burnout, because otherwise things are going to be impossible, because right now in a society that we are moving, which is digital, regardless of whether we are working or whether we are having fun, we are all the time on the screen. So, I was noticing last year, my screen time was about 9 hours in a day. Which was work time, and the rest of the time was probably when I was playing with my kids on the phone, or we were watching a movie and stuff. So which means it probably went down to about 13 hours. So which is really, really massive, which I'm trying to correct in 2022. So I think that's going to be one massive problem that is going to emerge. I mean, it's not it's certainly important to understand why mental health was mentioned in this year's budget 2022 speech, because it's something that is going to be a serious problem for us in the times to come. Next slide, please. So this is probably my last slide, and this is very quickly, I'm going to touch about it, is that, so I don't have data for India, but I found some data for US, that the most amount of monies that used to be spent by organizations prior to the pandemic was really on building more physical infrastructure, building larger offices, hiring more people, opening up, or essentially anything. Every piece of capital was largely deployed on how we could do more sales and therefore more profits, or more better numbers. But it was probably in the second quarter of 2020 that American companies spent more on software R&D than they did on fixed assets for the very first time in a decade. So essentially, scientific innovation for any organization is going to be the need of the hour. We've already seen a lot of digital transformation happening around us. Companies which were never digital in any way, they became digital in this last 1-2 years. Of course, we're still finding our ground when it comes to digital, but I think it's only just started, and there's going to be a lot of interesting innovations going to come both from legacy companies as well as from startups as we go forward. So that's it for me. Thank you very much. It's been lovely talking to you, and I would be happy to take some questions as and when directed.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your views. So the Q&A session will be opened half an hour before the end of the event. Now, I would like to introduce our next guest, who is the moderator for today's panel discussion, Mr. Pankaj Agarwal. Mr. Pankaj Agarwal is the founder and CEO at TagHive, a 4-year-old Samsung-funded education technology venture which operates in South Korea and India. He is an inventor on over 50 international patents and was on the list of Fortune India 40 Under 40 in 2021. He was also one of the 10 winners of MIT TR35 India Innovators Under 35 Award in 2017. Prior to Tag Hive, Mr. Agarwal was with Samsung Electronics for a decade-long career and an advisor to the CTO of Samsung. Mr. Agarwal is the founder and chairman of the IIT Alumni Association of South Korea since 2015. Mr. Agarwal is also a trained magician. He has a Bachelor of Technology degree from IIT Kanpur, MS from Seoul National University, and an MBA from Harvard Business School. We are honored to have you in our flagship event. The next guest for today's session is Mr. Rakesh Kalra. Rakesh Kalra is the founder and CEO at urbanpro.com. urbanpro.com offers live, online, and personalized classes for the students. An MS in the computer science from Boston University. Mr. Rakesh left his job as Vice President of Technology at CAD.com to start urbanpro.com. He has 24 years of work experience in corporates like LG Soft India Limited, Uprise.com, and CAD.com. Other than establishing urbanpro.com in India, he has also founded jmanage.organization in the US. We are honored to have you today, sir. Our next guest for today's session is Mr. Amit Kumar Agarwal. Amit Kumar Agarwal is a graduate of IIT ISM Dhanbad with more than 10 plus years of experience. He started his career with Tata Steel and then moved into the startup world. He is currently the co-founder of ConsultBay, which is into HR technology. He has previously worked with companies like Oyo Rooms, Go Mechanic, Pep Salons in various leadership roles in sales, operation, and growth. We are honored to have you today, sir. Our next guest for today's session is Mr. Saket Gangawar. Mr. Saket, a BITS Bilani alumni, has honored many hats as a founder, a mentor, and a teacher. He is also a founder of two startups, one by the name of Code Asylums, aimed at a collaborative upskilling environment for the coders, and other being the Flyboat Startups and Innovations. It is a nascent services firm empowering entrepreneurs by offering the financial advisory and collateral needed to raise capital. With strong cross-border experience, his envisions has three goals: to provide an understanding of the growth drivers and motivations of Indian startup founders, identify challenges facing by these startups, and outline the pillars in place that supports them, giving his fair share of contribution in the society by providing an environment for the raw talented students to transform into a better skilled version of themselves. We are honored to have you today, sir. Our next guest for today's session is Mr. Abhimanyu Singh. Abhimanyu Singh is a young and passionate architect having over a decade of industry experience in the field of architecture, design, products, and sustainable practices. He did a lot of experiment with paper, such as construction material, furniture design, product design, etc. His crown achievement is the innovation he has undergone during the COVID-19 pandemic. He designed and deployed ready-to-assemble isolation cabins for the COVID patients made of paper honeycomb. He also won a pandemic preparedness fellowship from the Royal Academy of London for the same. We are honored to have you today, sir. Our next guest for today's session is Mr. Pranav Kapoor. Mr. Pranav Kapoor hails from the holy city of Amritsar. He is an IIT alumni and ESADE Duke MBA graduate with work experience in India, USA, and Europe. Presently, he is building Dev Darshan, devotional platform for temples in Indian subcontinents for over 5,000 temples. We are honored to have you today, sir. We welcome all the esteemed panelists for today's event. Now, without any further delay, I would like to request Mr. Pankaj Agarwal, sir, our moderator of the event, to start the panel discussion, which paves way for other panelists to join the discussion.
Thank you so much, Roop, and it's wonderful to meet you all. I wish we could be there in person and see each other. It's a little bit weird to moderate a panel online because I don't see the panelists face to face. But I'll try to do justice to this event, and we have a big crowd here. And before I get started, I would like to thank Ritu for amazing insights that she shared in a presentation. Today's topic for the event is shifts in business practices that startups are pursuing, right? And Ritu pointed about mental health, burnout. She talked about hindrance to growth being the mindset. So all these are the shifts that startups are taking, or they have to take, because these are sort of new jargons that are coming forward, right? I never worried about mental health initially. I mean, in my old job or before pandemic. Now people talk about mental health, about burnout, about work-life balance. So I think it's pertinent and the right time that we discuss about these topics right now, because, and at the end, we all will end up leading businesses or building businesses. And a startup, by the nature of the business, is a shifting thing, because for me, I was an employee before. And when I did my startup, I started becoming an employer. So the shift for me was from an employee to an employer was a big one. And not only that, but also the way people think about businesses, the way people think about their own purpose, their own identity. It is very important that we address those points while we build a business. So in our panel today, we have 5 members: Rakesh, Pranav, Abhimanyu, Saket, and Amit. So I would like to ask a few common questions to all these panelist members. And there are specific questions that I have prepared for each of these panel members. But that said, if in the audience people have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. We'll address them as the time comes. This session is for you. We will be talking for around 90 minutes or so. But the idea here is that when you leave this session, at least take a few nuggets of wisdom, few takeaways that you would want to take. Okay, so please focus on that. And then towards the end, we'll try to summarize that as well. So let me begin by asking Rakesh. Rakesh, I don't see you right now. You can wave your hand because there are too many names here. So Rakesh, can you just first of all tell us very briefly about what you do, what business you are in?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Pankaj. So we run a education marketplace. So anybody who has knowledge, could be a teacher on Urban Pro, and a student looking to learn could find these teachers and learn from those teachers. Primarily, we focus on one-on-one. So 70% of classes happen in a one-on-one setup, and 30% would be small group classes, but very personalized to what these students would need. While we are category agnostic, so anybody could teach any subject, and anyone looking to learn that subject can find that teacher. And as a marketplace, we take care of ensuring the right teachers show up on the top. So that's the work we do. Primarily focus on 3 verticals. Tuition, school tuition, languages, and hobbies.
Okay, thank you. So Rakesh, how big is your team right now? And is it all in India right now?
It's all in India. We're about 75 people, so not a very large team. And now spread out everywhere. We are based in Bangalore, so we were in Bangalore, before Corona, but now the team is spread out. Maybe only 30% of the team would be in Bangalore.
Okay, thanks. Pranav, we would like to hear about your business as well. Dev Darshan is your business, and I was reading about it. I was very intrigued because this topic, this idea of Dev Darshan, it is so easy to understand, and it makes so much more sense in this time of pandemic. But can you please talk about your business a little bit and how big is the team?
Yeah, namaste everyone. I am originally from Amritsar, so really happy to if anyone wants to network with me in Amritsar, I would be happy to network with you because I personally want to see the growth of I am Amritsar because I am from this city. I've spent almost 20 years here. Thanks Ritu, thanks Pankaj for moderating this session before me, so Pankaj, your question is pertinent that because I have seen, so why this idea, why I wanted to work on this idea, first of all, because I am from Amritsar. I've seen the entire city surviving on religious tourism, on just one temple, a golden temple. The entire city survives, the entire economy runs. When I was abroad, a lot of people were really curious to know more about Indian culture. Who is Ma Durga? Who is Ganesha? Who is the Sikh guru, or who is Lord Buddha? So that even in South Korea, you would have experienced the same thing. People are really curious to know more about Indian culture, but there is no digital devotional platform to project about our vast Indian culture that spans around 20,000 years old. So what we are doing right now is building a devotional platform. There are 2 million temples in India. As Ritu mentioned, that the market size is one of the most important thing for any startup. So there are 1 million restaurants for Zomato, but there are 2 million temples in India. so almost twice the size of Zomato. And right now, so what one of the main thing that I've realized in last 2 years, earlier the pundits and the temple trust and all these traditional people, like religion is one of the most oldest, you can say, philosophical thing, or even the ancient thing that has happened to the mankind. And so like bringing the technology into that domain is really challenging. But the COVID pandemic has shifted the consumer behavior, and it has also like given a boost to the temples and pundits, the trust to adopt the digital medium. So what we are doing right now is providing a daily darshan for devotees as a content, and then we are doing as a online pujas, a group puja event. So right now, today is Basant Panchami. Happy Basant Panchami to all. So today we have a puja in one of the largest Ma Saraswati temple in Pushkar, where almost you can say 500, 700 people are taking part in puja via online mode. So yeah, that's what we are doing right now. In future, we will focus on digital donations to the temple during the live streaming of Aarti, religion, tourism. But right now, we are mainly focused on darshan and online pujas.
And how big is your team, Pranav?
It's almost 21 people. 21 people.
Yeah, I think in the audience today, we have people who would be building careers, and perhaps some of the students may join one of the companies where we are coming from. So, it's also a good chance for the talent to understand the space that we all are working in, and then make a choice of where you want to work or intern. That is a possibility. Abhimanyu, can you also explain about your business, what you do, and how big is your team?
Yes. Hi, Pankaj. So I'm from Jaipur, and I'm an architect. I run a construction tech startup. I'm an architect, as I mentioned. So we are challenging the traditional building industry, and we are using recycled paper as a construction material, because construction industry is one of the, I would say, the least innovative industry, and because they are still using the age-old materials, methods, and processes. And we are challenging them that you should be more sustainable. You should be using more sustainable materials, processes, and also other things. So that's why we introduced a new material which is called composite paper honeycomb panels. That has recycled paper in its core, and that is sandwiched between cement fiber boards. So essentially, it's a prefabricated technique, and we are trying to disrupt this construction industry market. That's a huge, a massive task what we have taken. But yes, it's been almost 3 years. I suppose we are the tiniest team here. We have only 6 people, and we are still building. We got a patent for our innovation this year, and recently we have launched a furniture and product range also that uses only paper. So you can say paper furniture and paper products.
Awesome. No, that is amazing, Abhimanyu.
Thank you.
And congratulations on that award that you got.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I think you made something that was right.
Yes.
Was important, useful at that point in time. So, kudos on that.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yep. Saket, we would like to hear from you. What business do you do, and how big is the team?
Hi. So we are a team of 10 people. We primarily work with, that is Flyboat. I also run Code SLMs. We are a team of 5 people and about 200 mentor partners. And Code SLMs is more into co-living boot camps, where we teach people on emerging tech and help them get placed into some of the most on-demand tech roles ever. And Flyboat, we like sometime 3 years ago, having come from investment banking and a private equity background, I observed 2 pain points in the market. 98% startups are not getting funded, and 97% engineers are unemployable. And somewhere in this, I found a solution and started off Flyboat, a program, a 25-day program for startups who are going for funding, would work with us closely, and primarily trained freshers would be put on the back-end functions, and me and my fellow colleagues would be on the front end. And we do VC and seed level funding advisory.
So if in the audience we have students who are looking at starting their own companies, or they have already started, perhaps they could look at your accelerator program.
Yes, I would love to. Always a pleasure to connect with budding entrepreneurs.
Saket, I have a question very specific to you. You said that 97% of the engineers are unemployable or are not employed. Is that even true right now? Because engineers are in big demand.
It would be somewhere around 90%. It's not the willingness to be employed, but it's about the skills they possess when they
Okay.
graduate.
Okay. So you
We
basically
have, in
upgrade-
fact, multiple publishers validating this time and again. Maybe the new education system has something different to offer for us. Really
Okay, so
looking
you basi-
forward to NEP.
So basically your boot camp basically, fills that gap and prepares them to be ready for a job in a company.
Right. Code
Okay.
SLMs is more into tech-based roles. At
Okay.
Flyboat also, we heavily recruit freshers. We have worked with about 120 startups so far in the last 3 years. And about 30 plus freshers have taken fellowship programs with us.
Awesome. And Amit, how about you? What do you build and how big is your team?
Sure. Thanks, Pankaj. So Consult Bay is the name of the firm what I'm building. Consult Bay actually helps startups, generally Series A funded companies to Series D, E funded companies to hire the best talent. So we are basically and primarily a recruitment consulting firm. We are building our own tech product. That tech product will be solving the problem of hiring via community and a network effect. So that's under the development phase. Currently, the team size is approximately 20. We are based out of Gurgaon, but the team is completely remote.
Great. So, Amit, the question to you, getting top talent for any company, even myself, I'm running a company and my team is 17 people right now. We have a team in Korea, 8 people, and we have a team in India of 9 people. And we're constantly, looking for good talent. So talent is in abundance, but good talent is in scarce. So, we are still looking for good talent all the time. So how do you what is the cool tip or suggestion that you would want to give to founders or company builders to secure good talent?
So if you completely see the recruitment industry,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that currently the candidates don't search the job. Actually, job search the candidate. So complete recruitment industry is 80% is the passive hiring that is being done, and only 20% is the active hiring that is being actually done. So in terms of any tips probably to the founder, I would say you should have a better pipeline. You should have the better connects with the candidates. You should have better portfolio of your company culture, what is there currently, and reaching out to right set of people is the basic major challenge as of now. So that's how what we think is solving this problem via community or a network effect will actually help.
So I think to your point, portals like Naukri.com or Job.com, those are the places where you would find 20% of the job. And the remaining 80% is happening through the mechanisms that you are building.
Right. You can.
I think this is a great point for the audience here. We are looking for jobs. I think, as Amit pointed out, we have to make our profile, our brand, so that jobs are able to find us and not the other way around, right? So that is such a useful thing. Now, Rakesh, the question to you, work from home is getting more accepted these days. Of course, inevitably we have to work from home. But what other cultural shifts have you been observing in your business in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think it was, we didn't know how to really react to it. When it happened. And I remember we said, let's do a trial run that everyone would work from home. Some of the operation team members, in fact, didn't even have a laptop. So we had to rent some laptops to get them started. And, one Friday we decided next week we were working from home as a trial, and then lockdown happened. So we kind of, from timing perspective, we were kind of ready that way. I think we had to adopt new tools and new processes to make things work. So, a chat system and a meeting system got adopted very quickly. So everyone is part of different rooms in the chat and are able to get quickly on a call when needed, on a video call. So I think that helps. And it's been from productivity wise, I think we have not seen any impact from the burnout. I think that's what has been the topic earlier. I think it's again mixed. I think some of the people have been able to pursue certain hobbies or other things that they wanted to do and couldn't do because of the huge travel time they had to be in the office. So it has helped them. I think younger folks were in the first 2 to 3 years of their career, they had to go back and live with the parents, and many of them don't want to do it. So they are very keen to have the office start and come back to Bangalore.
Interesting. So like Microsoft recently announced that all the employees don't have to respond to work mails after 6 p.m. And next day they can respond after 9 a.m. But does it really work in a startup space? Like, do you think that you can ever allow that?
Yeah, I think it is tough. I think what is important is to make sure there is breathing room. I think that's very important. So we try to keep a rhythm where weekdays are busy, no matter. I mean that's very true. But we make sure the weekends are relaxed. So that rhythm works very well. So you work hard weekdays. You have the Saturday, Sunday to kind of relax and come back fresh Monday morning to go chase new challenges.
Awesome. Pranav, like your business model is based on the remote sort of feel. Devdarshan is all remote. So what are the sort of approaches that you use to keep your employees or your team members engaged?
Yeah. So most of the team is working remote right now. And it's spread across I think so 9 states in India. Some are from south and some are from north. So we try to do so one of the most important thing, because you earlier asked regarding hiring also, what I look at is including the skill is the passion. If I'm building something related to the Indian culture, that person should be passionate about the Indian culture. To showcase, that person should share the same passion like me to showcase that culture on the world stage. So that's one of the things. So what we do like weekly, on the weekends we do sessions with the team members. As the Slack was mentioned, we are using Slack as one of the most important communication channel for handling all the work conversations. We do to engage our team members. We are trying to conduct like a weekly session during the weekend. And that's the most and yeah, it's hard, because when I have been working when you're working in the same space, in the office space, it's easier to connect with the people. Remote working is a bit hard. It saves for startup. The best thing that do is it saves on the office space, office renting space and everything that big companies spend a lot of money on. But remote working, you need to connect. You need to have like daily sprint meetings with everyone in the morning with the team, so that you need to have these 15 minutes, 20 minutes meetings, so that you can know what's going on yesterday, what do we have to do today. That's one of the most important thing, to touch base with the team every day. And then we do like engaging sessions. Our HR tries to conduct engaging sessions on the weekends. But yeah, working remote, I would say it's much more harder. Like it's similar to like right now IIM Amritsar is not in the campus. It would be a similar feeling like while working remote. The same feeling would be there.
I think the implication here for the audience and for all of us is that we look for jobs, and traditionally in the olden days, or the old school, is basically you look for a job because you want to make a living, right? But I think right now the shift is in that we are looking for purpose.
Yeah.
And as when we hire people, also when we hire members to join our company, we really look for purpose. Because if we hire somebody who's just coming here to for salary, which is true in most cases, then that doesn't last long.
Yep.
So I think even to the audience here, you will have a number of job options. So please don't settle to any one very easily. You have to understand, for example, Devdarshan, if you want to really build something in that direction, then you go there. Then the burnout, all these check-ins, they become irrelevant, honestly, right?
True.
So that is what I think is a big takeaway for me. And personally, in my business, I have found that purpose element empowers me to have a lot of bandwidth. And automatically, a lot of filtering happens. People who are not connected, they will find jobs and they'll move on. And people who are connected to our idea, they'll come forward and say, hey, I want to work together with you. So that's a big shift that we have seen, at least in our company. But moving on, so, Abhimanyu, like, you work with the governments and NGOs, and now with the pandemic on, it's so difficult to go and meet these people in person. So, what approaches have you used to really be relevant and also have some speed in your business?
So I think as I mentioned, we are the lowest tech startup, I would say, because we work in the construction sector, so that has not adopted technology as a whole. And apart from our team, we work with the extended team of contractors, workers, and all those people. So we cannot have a universal system that we cannot have adopt Slack or something so that everyone can join in. So we have to move to different systems. Like workers are really okay with WhatsApp callings, small videos. So we use a couple of methods, because let's say if you want to tell something to a government official, so they want to see a demo. So generally we send them a small video, or we along with the contractor. So it's kind of a hybrid approach, I would say. Sometimes we have to we have to see the situation, and accordingly we have to respond, because of the obvious factors that people are not the team plus the extended team. So I think it was difficult for us, yes, but kind of we have adopted thanks to technology, because now all these people, they have smartphones, they are used to watching videos on YouTube, calling on WhatsApp. So I think they have it took time, but yes, now they're okay with it. Okay, if I want to give a demo to the worker that this is how the walls will be joining, so they know, they now understand that, okay, this is the method. If you send them a small video, they're okay with it.
No, that is true. I think because it's about safety here. Even if you want to meet people, when I go from Korea to India, they will always say, "When did you come to India?" Because they are afraid of meeting me if I came yesterday. So I think on the other side, they always prefer as well to be meeting online, because it's about their safety as well. So I think that big shift of willingness to get on a portal or get on a Zoom call, where they want people to be, in the past, they wanted people to be in person there, wait for them for long in the line, or, come tomorrow kind of thing. But now it's all saving us time, right? We don't have to go there in person. We don't have to wait. If you have to wait, it's just, okay, another call. So we can keep on doing our other work, right? That's a big shift. Absolutely. No, nice. Saket, so to you, like, what other shifts have you seen in the workspace besides work from home?
Well, personally, the first lockdown was brutal for us. We like kind of moved out of our co-working space, and then suddenly the team was completely remote, and also had to face some attrition. But yeah, we kind of, I would say, institutionalized ourselves, defined a lot of processes and frameworks around what we do. And a couple of practices that I have brought in, like one of the panelists mentioned before, sprint is very important, a morning sprint preferably. We can still have working hours flexible, not a problem. In fact, it probably is advantageous in some situations. Sprints are important. And there is a stat that says 67% people in online meetings are distracted. So it's important we make, like, it wouldn't be like nice to enforce people to switch on videos during the call, but more like a practice that gets adopted. That is important. And we are heavily dependent on Google Suite, and some app scripting and spreadsheets has let us like make communication a little more streamlined. But yeah, even today, communication is the biggest challenge we face. But things are a lot better. The second lockdown was more like, if I could say, first lockdown was more like a beta. Second lockdown was where we implemented all the problems we had with the first lockdown.
Well, absolutely. I think, you rightly pointed it out. In the old school, like when I say old school, I mean pre-pandemic, going to the office was the job. But now, because if you went to the office, you showed your face, so I'm there, I'm doing the job, please don't touch me, right? I'm here. But now it's not about I'm here. What am I doing here? It's not about the activities, it's about the outcomes. I'm spending my 8 hours or 9 hours. Of course, we cannot check that. We will not check that, but we can check the outcomes. So how many clients did we bring to the table? How many reports did we submit? All those things become so much more meaningful. And also as an employee, people find it easy because now they have clear KPIs, what they need to deliver on. So it's
that's way. The best part about digitization as well. Like, when we are bringing in operational data onto our systems, it's also fast, real time, and easier to keep these milestones and to measure and quickly do something about it. I think that's the biggest advantage startups have today over the large corporations out there.
Absolutely. But one thing, Saket, that perhaps gets lost because of work from home is that water cooler effect. Where you just bump into somebody over a coffee and say, "Acha, ye soch raha hu main. Iska, what do you think?" Or somebody says, "Hey, itne dukhi kyun lag rahe ho? Aaj kya ho gaya? Kahan phas gaye ho?" Then you say, "Arey, ye idea ya mil raha nahi hai." Then you say, "Why don't you do it this way?" So those kind of conversations, which, are where you have a lot of serendipity, that is not happening, right?
Right. I think even the most passionate employees have a lot of distractions to deal with in the remote work environment.
Correct. And I think, what we do at our company is video is on all the time. We don't, not all the time. Whenever you have meetings, it's all video on meetings. Because we say that as if you're going to be in person, right? So you would not cover your face and talk to me, right? So unless and until you are outside, it's too much noise and all that. So we try to keep it all video on meetings, so that it's, as you rightly mentioned, otherwise there's a lot of distraction. Even if we kind of turn off our videos right now and have this panel discussion, I'm sure we will get lost.
But still, like, the concept of having the video on automatically brings a lot of attention to the screen. So people are more engaged.
Absolutely. No, nice. And Amit, to you, again, what shifts? You are in the HR space, so I think you have the best ideas and most sort of vetted ideas on what works, what does not work. So what are some of the positive shifts that you have seen that modern that startups have taken today to increase their productivity and efficiency?
Right. So starting with our own experience, when we started Consult Bay, it was post pandemic first wave, and it was somewhere October, November. So at that time, we have resumed the office, and we were working from office for around 2-3 months. And when the second wave actually hit, then there was a complete shift wherein we have to, work from home. And at that time, we used to think that it's pretty difficult to, shift completely to work from home with a very new team wherein we don't have interaction too much. We have not proved ourselves. The results are not that great. But eventually I figured it out that, working remote is actually giving better productivity, wherein you try to catch up guys in the morning. You try to have the day end meeting wherein you are more systematic, you are more punctual. The value of time is actually can actually be measured also, wherein, if you have to log in at 3 o'clock for the meeting, the guys are there to log in at 3 o'clock. So that is the positive thing what I see. On the second aspect, I would say, in terms of the sales. So let's say if you are in a B2B sales business wherein you have to go to the office and meet the guy, wherein you need to convert the sales. Now it's pretty easy, wherein you will log in and you don't have any waiting hours, and you'll just have your deal cracked. Let's say you have the meeting today, and then that you'll crack the deal, and then you'll move forward, and then you'll approach the another guy for the for building up the sales. So value for time and probably sales conversion is, I think, two things that has really improved probably in this work from home scenario. If you ask me in terms of the things what other companies probably have adopted, so the best method is they are adopting the hybrid work culture, wherein they are asking the team members to at least come office for, let's say, 1 day a week, or probably the best method is let's catch up every once in every 3 months, so that we have that feel that yes, we are meeting physically, and then the productivity can also be measured, wherein you can have the quarterly calls with the team, wherein you will have the quarterly budgets discussion and everything.
No, great. I think now we'll shift gears a little bit, but before we go there, I think I personally believe that business is about 3 things. One is people, second is the product, and third is the money. So if you have investment money or your own money, you're able to bring the team on, and the team can build the product, and then you can have a sustainable business. So I think we're talking about shifts today. What shifts are we seeing? I think we are seeing the shifts in all these 3 sort of buckets. On the people bucket, we see the shift that people no more want to become just employees. People want to actually work for a cause. Most of the people, this is a spreading phenomenon. And I think over the time, what will happen is it is very common to see that we will be working with all the founders in a team, right? Pretty much. And number 2, about the product, I think so far product was more about, you didn't really think about the product in detail, but now you actually build the product to solve a meaningful problem, to save the planet. There's a purpose behind why you're building what you're building, right? And number 3, about the money, the capital, I think unlike in the past where capital was so scarce, but now you are able to find capital so easily. The investors who want to bet on you because they see a huge market, right? And I think in all these three buckets, we are seeing the shift in the people bucket, from just being an employee to now being a purpose-driven employee, from on the product side to just building up any product to actually building a product that matters to you. And on the money side, where it was just, you didn't have capital, now you have abundance of capital. So people are willing to bet on you if you have an amazing idea and an amazing team. Now, again, moving more deeper now, I always respect entrepreneurs because entrepreneurship journey is easier said than done. People think, oh, you are entrepreneur, you are your own boss. But believe me, guys, it's such a tough journey. And who would know more than Rakesh, who has, built multiple businesses? Rakesh, you are a serial entrepreneur, and you have built business not only in India, which is a tough market, by the way, to build a business, and also in the US. Now, I would like to ask you, what are some of the differences that you see between the startups of the West and of India, and how have these differences evolved over time? You talked to me. I'm sure you have a lot of ideas, and again, people in India, they know about the startups of the West. But if you can give a first-hand description of how they work and how our startups in India work, and how are the differences kind of, the gap is reducing over time.
Yeah. I think US is a more evolved market. There is people maybe embrace failure much more easily. I think it's okay to fail. I think that is something that India is still learning. I think we learn. So if I take my own example, it was very difficult for me to convince my parents that, or my father in particular, that I want to do a startup, right? Because he thought I should be joining Microsoft or any of the large companies. So there is that resistance. Even parents push kids to be in a more stable job rather than being at a startup. I think the other, India is evolving very fast, but in the talent, there's a lot of talent in India. And the one key difference I see is that I think there is a certain fear of authority, maybe that's a culture how we kind of grow up in. And I see a lot of young people who have a lot of talent, but they're in a shell. I think they are not really coming out of that shell. It takes a lot of time to even ask, having the courage to ask a question. I think there's one difference I see, that youngsters in US are, fearless, and they would, be willing to, if they think they're right, they would voice their opinion. I think voicing of opinion is one thing. I want to see more of that happen. So even when we hire young people, it takes some time for them to really come out of that shell and start contributing beyond just doing what they are told to do. But I think India is evolving very, very fast. It's evolving super fast.
Yeah, I think the fear of failure is, we always say that don't fear failure, but we also say that don't fail, right? So that culture that we have, and we always start we think perhaps too short-termish. We think, abhi chalu kiya to ek saal ke andar banana hai kuch. But these things take time. If it was so easy, then somebody else would have already built it. So that understanding, and of course, if you fail, I think in the US, people actually wear failure as a badge of honor. They actually ask an interview question: where have you failed? Talk about that, right? If you go to a job, and if you say I have no failures, I say, okay, never tried hard enough. I think that is such an important. I think this thing this is a cultural thing, so it will only go with time. And now with Shark Tank in India, the awareness about startups coming into the mainstream, people actually are talking about acha karte hain, dekhte hain kya hoga, right? So while they will not say that don't fail or it's okay to fail, they will try, and I think that will come naturally to the fabric of the Indian ecosystem, startup ecosystem. That is so true. And to your other point on being fearless, not asking questions, that is also so true. But I think sometimes it is also useful, because if you ask too many questions, then Maybe not. I think you should keep on asking questions actually, because what I've seen is sometimes people ask too many questions and get lost in that detail, and because you don't have answers to those questions. So it's just okay, karna hai, and then just move into it. Nothing can be, many times it is difficult to give a logic to your thought. And if you start justifying every action that you're taking, perhaps it will be not easy to move forward. But Rakesh, I think with questions, you mean something else, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I think that's what I mean. I meant that not voicing, not having the courage to voice your opinion. I think that's what I see. That's a bit lacking, compared to in US. I think people in US would just tell what they're thinking. I think we tend to maybe hold back a bit, and it takes more effort to come out of the shell and get comfortable with even if you don't believe in what you're doing, or you see some gaps, sometimes you don't call out. I think that's what I meant to.
I stay in Korea, and then people ask me ki cultural difference kya hai, Korea, India, US mein, because I studied in all these 3 countries. So I give a very classic example, and maybe this is not apt to the situation. Just for fun, let's hear it out. So I say that agar ek room mein 5 chair rakhe hue hain, all spread out chairs here and there, and we ask Americans to put it in order, then they will say, how much will you pay me for this? And they will do the job. So Americans or Western, generally speaking, they'll say, how much will you pay me? And they'll do the job. Koreans se puchoge ki, same job, then they will do it right. They'll ask you ki kitna dimension mein kahan rakhna hai, and they will do it to the point. And if you ask Indians ki chair rakhna hai, put these chairs in order, they'll say, kyun karna hai? Why? It is good. So that is like, that is one of the things that I always use to talk about the cultural differences. But I think, to your jokes apart, Rakesh, I think your point is that if we are having an opinion, we should also always express that, and also this will automatically happen if our leaders in the companies are able to create a culture where they hear those opinions and say, "Acha, ye isliye hota hai, ye isliye nahi hota hai." Then I think people will start asking more and more questions. I think that is so important.
Yeah, I think it's okay to be wrong. I think it's okay to be, wrong. I think we fear too much that we'll be wrong if we say something.
No, absolutely. No, great. Pranav, you started Devdarshan 2 years ago, right? And it must be a lot of work to build the team and processes, right? Now, can you share some of the ideas that has really helped you to get a good speed in growing your business?
So like right now, there's a really pertinent question right now, because we are talking to an MBA school, like the students from the MBA school. So the number one thing I would right now, the main thing that I can advise them to focus on networking other than academics. Like academics are always secondary in MBA. That's what they teach you in Harvard or SRD and all the business schools of the world. So why I'm saying this, because our first round of investment, like the angel round, it came from my batchmates at the business school. So my batchmates who were with me, they were like some from US, some from Europe. They only invested in our first round in the angel round. So the first thing I would always say, that always focus on networking. It's really tough right now in the remote environment. Try to meet up with your peers. If it's not possible in Amritsar, try to schedule the meeting, because this is the most important time you can give to understand what the other guy career path has been till now, and what other guy passion and interest are, because these would be the friends for your life. Then so investment is one of the most important thing to give the speed to any startup. That's why I pointed out for networking. The second thing, I think so, what we are trying to do is, as Saket earlier mentioned, and you were also having a discussion with him, that the like 90% of engineers are not employable in India. I would say like hard skills are much better in India as compared to other countries in Asia or in Europe or in US. Like real Indian engineers are much better than, I would say, the American engineers. Like talking about the hard skills, the most important thing we are lacking right now is on soft skills that they teach you in the business school. So that's the most important thing. So right now what we are doing, so with passion, what I am looking right now at Devdarshan, the person who can basically knows how to pitch our product to the temples. So we are building a team locally on ground. like of temple relationship managers in all holy centers of India. It could be Dwarka, it could be Varanasi, it could be Haridwar, it could be Ujjain. So we are building a team of those local people who can onboard the temples on the devotional platform and bring some speed to the Devdarshan. We've already onboarded like 150 temples across 16 states, and the market size is really big. The second thing is, as it was mentioned in the presentation, for bringing the speed to the process would be the product iterations. Like they mentioned the MVP kind of a thing. So in the digital world, when you release one app version, then test the feedback of the users. So we are initially started with the free service of daily darshan from temples. It failed because temple were not even interested in just providing darshan to devotees. They also act like a business at the end of the day, like and they also want to, like, the pandits have their families to feed. So they wanted some revenue generation. Then we went on to pujas, and then now we will go to digital donation. So you need to see which product fits the supply side and the demand side, and then accordingly you need to evolve the product over the course of the startup journey. So that's one of the most important.
I think what I'm taking away from your point, Pranav, is about iterations, fast iteration, and how we talked about lean startup, this build, measure, and learn. This is the design thinking approach that most of the MBA students here would know, or human-centered design. You hear about what the needs are, and then you understand them, and you build products, and then again you go back to the customer and see, did I hear correctly? Did I understand you correctly? And then again you keep on making those iterations. And at the end, you talked about temple. Temple looks like a place of worship, but as you rightly pointed out, it's also a business.
Yeah.
So when you are doing any company or any startup, looking at the same thing from a different lens, it becomes so essential to really build a sustainable business. Well, that's so powerful, Pranav. Abhimanyu, I have this, I work with the governments as well a lot. Our model. So by the way, what we do with at Tag Hive is we build low cost solutions that can make any school smart. We build Class Sathi, which is about a very simple to use product that can be used in any government school in India. And it can be used without internet connectivity, without electricity in the classrooms, and you can quantify learning. Now we are selling that idea to the government, and we have, taken a lot of time to convince the 2 state governments to work with us, and we are working with them. Now, Abhimanyu, you work with governments all the time, right? And NGOs as well. There's a perception that governments and NGOs are not so fast, and a startup is supposed to be a fast machine. Now, how do you kind of reconcile with this fast mindset and the slow sort of end customer? What is your approach? Do you have any process that you use to kind of bridge this gap?
So I would say the things you mentioned are correct, that these government officials, NGOs may not be as fast as we are as startups. But I think the key would be to find the right person. Sometimes if we do not find, we are failed to find the right person. If we know that's the right person, and if we are asking the right questions, that would be ideal for us. So in our case, what we did is we kind of do our homework and try to find the right person, so that if that person, let's say, we all know bureaucracy has a lot of levels. And in the bureaucracy, if you can find a person who is the decision maker, and if you pitch it to them, and because we know that these IAS officers, IAPS officers, they are very fast. They are known to take decisions very, very quickly. So in our case, the same thing happened. Just to give you an example, as I mentioned, because in the time of pandemic, the construction activities were at halt. We were not doing anything because it's all field job. So no construction activity was going on. We looked around and we thought all we had was the material, the honeycomb material with us. And we thought, how can we use it in a faster way? How can we use it in this pandemic situation? So we quickly made a prototype of the isolation bed, did a scale model, and approached, because the governments were doing a lot of COVID care centers, they were making quarantine centers, they wanted so many beds. So we thought this is the right opportunity where we can use this material. If not in construction, then why not beds? So we kind of pivoted, and we approached the health secretary. He's a senior IAS officer. And I went to his room at 7 o'clock in the evening, It was full of 50 people in COVID pandemic time. And I just had a scale model. It was 1:4 scale model because because that was the only thing available for us. We did a scale model and I went to him and he said, he asked me how much, because this is a paper material, how much weight it can take. I said, this bed can take up to 300 kilos. And he took 5 seconds and said, you are holding a scale model, which is 1:4, just 1/4 of its size. That means it should take at least your weight. Can you stand on it? I just quickly assembled the model and it was a room full of 50 people. I just stood on it and he said, and in 10 seconds, he said, yes, it works and give us 100 beds. So I think I would say in most of the cases, we could shorten this process by finding the right people. Yes, there are some loopholes in between, but if you find the right people, the job becomes really, really easy for us.
Well, absolutely. I think that is the key. Finding the right people, not only in your business, but in all businesses is so key. And people say there's a famous Pareto principle, that 80-20 rule, that 80% of your efforts will lead to 20% of your output and 20% of your efforts will lead to 80% of your output. So I think that is where that 20% is about finding the right person whom you want to talk to, right? So that is so key, so key. I totally agree with you on that. And thanks for sharing that. Saket, unlike other members on the panel, including myself, you are building something that is actually empowering entrepreneurs, with your approach. It is you're building a platform, which is such an amazing thing, and which kind of means that you'll be talking to a lot of entrepreneurs on a daily basis, right, Saket?
Yes.
You
Yes.
would hear good stories, sort of, I'm so much stressed and all those stories. And can you please share from your lenses some of the shifts that you are seeing these entrepreneurs are making in building their businesses?
Right. Okay. So primarily, I work with very early stage companies, seed, pre-series. These are the startups who come to me, and it's always a pleasure. Like we kind of try evaluating every startup that comes to us before making a pitch for our services. And I think the thrill is in looking at a business plan and finding the viability of it. And it's always like exciting to hear new ideas, right? From a broad-based, I think Indian startup ecosystem has a very strong opportunity. We have about one unicorn coming out every 9 days right now in the current trend. About 42 billion funding has been deployed. 3 years ago, this number was 10 billion, and not all of it was deployed on an annual basis. So yes, there is a big opportunity out there. I would classify these early stage startups into two broad buckets: light tech startups and deep tech startups. A deep tech startup is probably a torchbearer, a pioneer, leading a new path, creating a sector behind them. Light tech startups probably have many different ways of getting there. For example, like when it comes to building an MVP, right? A minimum viable product. We are probably looking for a product that could solve the basic needs, basic use cases that you are trying to target. Today, with the explosion of SaaS, software as a service, and PaaS, platform as a service models, there is the products which would cost millions, like just 5-6 years ago, are available for peanuts on per user, per subscription basis. So I think startups should leverage that to their advantage. Put together a concierge MVP, something that takes minimal of your resources, minimal of your time, and comes at a very reasonable price. I think that's very important, because going to the market will start, that's where your learning process is probably starting, right? And yes, funding as a crossroad. I would suggest all my entrepreneurs to delay the decision to get funded as much as possible, helps them stay frugal for longer, and gets them better valuations in the future. But having said that, once the decision is made, the next 3-4 months is extremely important. It's not just funding campaigns that you are focused on. It's also the operations. You need to showcase that growth for investors to come in, right? So yes, that 3-4 month journey, whenever the decision is made, startup should be very well prepared for that.
Oh, that is, I think you said a lot of nice stuff, Saket, and only an entrepreneur perhaps would be able to connect at a deeper level with what you have pointed out. We always, as entrepreneurs, want to move fast, but we have to understand it's like a marathon, and we need to slow down, speed up, and play that game so that we stay healthy in our minds, and also not push too much that breaks the business or breaks the team, right? So, but also speed up when it is required. Like we have commitments to the investors that we have made, so we need to fulfill those commitments as well. So I think all those things are so essential, and entrepreneurs have to juggle between all these things, you know.
Right, right. Just to add to that, taking an inference from a book I read recently, human mind has a fast and slow thinking parts to it, like more like your conscious and subconscious. A founder is probably taking decisions every day. I think it's important that entrepreneurs find a balance between these two.
Absolutely. I think this person, Daniel Kahneman, who wrote this book, Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow, who actually won a Nobel Prize for this.
Yes.
And to the audience, maybe some of you already know this, but you would not believe that people make decisions, human beings make the decisions in a most irrational manner. You may think that we all are rational animals, but human beings are the most irrational when it comes to decision making. That is so ironic because we put so much of time to analyze, put the Excel sheet, metrics, code rows and columns, and we make a decision which is completely irrational because it is guided by fear, guided by emotions, guided by other factors, right? So if you are making a poor decision, on the face of it, please understand that your fast mind is working there. Your slow mind would say think more, your fast mind would say go for emotions, right? So that is there. What I do as a practice is after I make a decision, I have a decision sheet on an Excel file where I write my decision and the date, and I look at the same decision after 3 months and I said, was it a good decision or not? Because then I have the data points of 3 months and I can look back and say that did I make the right decision or not? And then I can calibrate myself, because as CEOs, as leaders, our majority of the job is about making high quality decisions, right? So Amazon's CEO Jeff Bezos says that leaders get paid to make quality decisions, and hence they get paid too high because they need to really think hard before they make a decision. So while we make too many decisions in a day, I think good leaders just need to make one or two big decisions, and that should be all, right? So that is so insightful, Saket, by the way. I think what you mentioned is key, that we need to constantly make decisions, but at the same time be aware of how we are making them. Right? That is true. Amit, to you, you have worked in various leadership roles, and now you are building your own business, and HR is a very exciting field. Now, can you share some of the practices that you have adopted from the companies that you worked for? And second question to you is, like, when you build your own business, you come across ideas, "Arey, ye wahan pe kyun nahi hai?" So you came across certain ideas that you have in your company, which is unique. So two questions to you. Something that you have learned from your past business, and I'm putting it here. And number two is something that you have deployed as a new idea that you would perhaps want to suggest to other companies to work on.
So answering these two questions, I think the number one answer is, pivoting the model frequently. So if I want to share my experience after, graduating from college, I went to Tata Steel. And then after that, I joined an early stage startup that was Pepsalon. So one of my batchmates from the college was actually building a chain of salons. So while building the chain of salons in a span of around 1 year, we actually pivoted in 3 business models. So initially we started with aggregation of salons, then we moved into selling the products to the B2B firm, and then finally the company landed into becoming a D2C brand, which is currently M Caffeine. So how we pivot the business model is what I actually learned a lot. The second point is, I think in terms of speed and agility, what I see with few of the companies, and I've also experienced in terms of working with Oyo, that how speed and agility is one of the factors that plays a very important role in scaling up any of the businesses, right? And the third point is, I think whenever you're solving a problem, you should try to solve that problem with first principle thinking. So let's say if I'm solving a problem for hiring. So now if you need to hire someone in your team, what you would do is you would ask your recruiter to, source a profile, to screen that profile, talk to the candidates, and then schedule the interviews, pitch for the company and all that, right? So currently this has been done by one of the guy in the system. What we do is we have broken up the complete process into 3 parts, wherein I would say that sourcing will typically be done by those guys who are high on aptitude, or probably those who have a good number of experience in the recruitment industry. The second part is we have break down into the screening part, wherein the recruiters would be doing the screening call to generate the interest and tell them about the company, and then knowing their interest level. And then the third part is probably for our case it comes as account management. For the company's case it can come as into pitching up the company culture, and also aligning the interviews, and then coordination and the stakeholder management is something what I would say is the third step. So that's how we have currently divided our current system and processes. So yeah, so that is it.
No, that is so true. I think you talked about a couple of points here, and I think one thing that I also always use is the idea of first principles. And I didn't know about first principles until Elon Musk talked about it when he was giving an interview, and he said that like he wanted to build rocket for Mars, right, for going to Mars, because he was not able to procure rockets for going to Mars. Then he asked himself, like, this fundamental question: so what are rockets made of? This is the first principle thinking. So you ask yourself, what are rockets made of?
Right.
So basically you say, okay, rockets are made of aerospace grade materials, plus some titanium and all that. Then he asked himself, so what is the value of those materials on the commodity market? Like, is it something that is not easy to procure? And that it turned out that these materials cost only 2% of the typical price of the rocket, right? So he was then able to build his own rocket. So what I'm trying to say here is that we should not be bogged down with the industry sort of perceptions ki aapse hoga nahi. Like, always understand what are you trying to solve for. The complicated stuff में उसको break down करें small parts में, and then you are able to get there, right? So that is what you meant with the fundamental or the first principle thinking approach here, right, Amit? So
Yes.
we all have when we are stuck in a problem, it's difficult to break down problems, right? But if we know that this is what we want to achieve, if the clarity of question is there, then we can actually achieve or find the solution to that purpose or to that question. No, great. I would also ask the audience to share any questions that they may have in the chat box. I'm happy to use some of those questions and try to combine a few, if at all. I have a few more questions that I can ask the panelists right now. But if the audience has, please feel free to reach out. I would also now request all the panel members to share, nuggets of advice that one by one that they may want to give to the students here, because students have this amazing benefit that they can make mistakes, that they can do whatever they want. So while they are right now students, what advice would you like to give them? Starting with, say, Rakesh, what is that sort of two-piece advice that you could give to your younger self, if that is the right way if I put it?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to find what you love, and I think often we get into a job not realizing if that's what you want to do, and it's okay. I think it's okay to get into a job that may not be your true passion, but what is not okay is to give up looking for what would truly excite you. So I think that's very important, to keep looking for something that I think it's best if you have already found your passion, then you have your entire life to pursue it. But you have not, do multiple things, try out different things. I think it's okay to try out different things and keep trying it out until you find what truly drives you. Because we end up spending a lot of time at work, and if you're not really enjoying what you're doing, then that's when burnout happens. If you enjoy what you do, then you're happy just doing it, no matter how much time it takes. I think finding passion is the most important thing, and second most important thing is to figure out how to fight your fear. I think it's the fear that would typically keep bringing you down, and it's again because we are built that way, right? I mean, there's a fear of not passing an exam, not fear of not getting a good college, then the fear of not getting a good job, fear of not getting a good salary. So it's how we are brought up with those fears built in, the layers of fears built in, and how do you kill those those layers over time, and be respectful. Of course, be respectful, but be fearless is what I would say.
Oh, absolutely. I think, and I'm sure that we need to talk. I mean, while we are on the panel, it also applies to us, by the way. I think that we also tend to become fearful about things. And I read somewhere that, uh, only 4% of the things that we fear about come true. 96% of the things that we fear never happen. So this is so important because we always imagine, ye ho jayega, wo ho jayega, nothing happens. And so we basically are wasting our time fearing that. So to Rakesh's point, I think we should not, because now that we know the data that only 4% of our fears actually come true, or that happens. So we should not carry the baggage of that 96%. So our target, my personal target is to be in that 4%, or just remove everything else. Before I sleep, I just take off my stress and put it in the trash can and then sleep. It's so important. Otherwise, you keep on dragging it, and it applies to all of us. And trust me, as you go on in life in the future, you will be more fearful, or you will have more reasons to fear. You'll have family, you will have your job, you will have your reputation. There's so much that you would fear losing, right? So this is a good time to practice this habit of being fearless and letting things go, and not to worry too much. Pranav, what do you suggest? I'm sure you have similar ideas, but what different idea would you want to suggest to the people here?
Yeah, like as Rakesh ji and Pankaj just mentioned, I think so. The life is too short to fear, so never fear, never give up, and enjoy life. I would say, because I was a part of MBA at India. I was at IIM Lucknow. I dropped out of that college. I was in Europe. I was a part of MBA program in US. So the best for the MBA students, the best advice I would say: try out different things. If you want to pursue a career in finance, if you want to pursue a career in entrepreneurship, in marketing, try different things. The college is the best time to try. Find your passion and just enjoy your life at your work also. And networking should be the number one objective of any MBA program, I think so. Just focus on building your network. That's the best thing you can do during the MBA. Party hard, like it's a college time. Right now, I don't know how you can, like the students can party during this time, like during the COVID time. Work during the day. And in MBA, I would say Pankaj would also conquer at me. Like there's a lot of parties in MBA, in business schools, especially abroad. So just enjoy life and party hard. Life is too short to worry about many things. Just enjoy life. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Party hard, but please stay safe. Don't cross the limits. Everybody defines their own limits, but and stay respectful to everybody. So that is very important as well. Abhimanyu, what about you?
So yes, I would say two things. The first thing I will take forward, as Rakesh mentioned, being fearless. So I would say the other part of being fearless is we should learn to say no. Learn to say no to investors, people who we don't. If we are not confident, we should learn to say no. We may find an investor who is not good for our business. He may be providing some money to us, but not the value what we are looking at. We should say no. We should not be shying away from saying no. This is not we are taught in our schools or in our upbringing also, but we should learn. We should learn to say no. And the second part of it, we should know what we don't want to do it. What we want to do it, we'll figure it out. We'll have time, but we should have a list. This I don't want to do. So that will give us a lot of clarity, and that gives me also a lot of clarity. So क्या नहीं करना है वो पता होना चाहिए. क्या करने के लिए we have time to figure it out.
Oh, this is again so important. I think all of us. I'm right now I do so many interviews these days, and I ask what is your biggest challenge or area of improvement. Almost all the time I hear this answer that I am finding it difficult to say no. I think in a culture where we are brought up, we always are told to say yes, yes. And I think saying no brings us into a conflict zone as well. So India, I mean, culturally, we are brought up to avoid conflict. So, we generally say, okay, dekh lenge. And then that creates more confusion and that leads to more trouble. But, Abhimanyu, very true. I'm myself learning to say no at times. It's so difficult, but very important, by the way, skill set that we need to have right from the sort of early days. Saket, what about you?
Well, adding on to all other panelists, I think there is a fine line between being fearless and reckless. It's important that we constantly acknowledge ourselves about the decisions we are making. And secondly, yes, saying no has in fact given me more business sometimes at times than saying yes. When I say no to clients to come back later, I have often observed that I get more referrals from these founders, and they always remember us and come back in many cases. So yes, those 2 points. And to the to all the business grads out there, I think compared to workforce in the West, we lack some fundamental business education. And I think these guys here being in IIM have that opportunity, one of the best business schools. But having said that, there is a strong convergence happening between tech and business-based roles. If we can also see this with tech-based MBA programs coming out in the US and et cetera, et cetera. We are in an era of information abundance. So be little, if like even at a surface level, be tech enabled as much as possible. It only takes like, you don't need any specialized tools or access to get there. You just have to learn to use Google as often as possible. I think all the answers are out there.
Absolutely.
And one more topic I would touch upon is we come from a very competitive environment. It's probably inherent for most of us to look at our peers. I would like say a strong no to that. Like, be conscious about what you're earning. What you're earning is not just the money or the knowledge you're getting from the role. Impact, often it's hard to measure, but you can also try constantly reassessing yourself on the impact you're creating to people and the planet out there.
Well, I think, right. I mean, these are inputs to myself as well. Like, when I hear you talking about reckless versus fearless versus saying yes, no right now, and then getting more businesses later on. This is so true. But I think, one thing I really feel that there's no right answer. So, you build your character over time, you make mistakes. We all need to make mistakes, but of course, within the range, within the boundaries, and we should let our own journey or our own experiences guide us. That is so important. Then we really value the importance of these ideas of saying no or being fearless or, not being reckless and all of that, right? Amit, to you, what do you advise? I think you are in a sort of disadvantage here because all the good ideas have been already talked about, right?
So I think everyone should have their learning mode on, and this is probably true for all of us also. And we should have our learning mode on with our focus towards the goal, and we should actually contribute. We should actually focus, and we should actually aim to contribute small contribution on a daily basis, or a small improvement on a daily basis that would actually create a larger impact going forward in the complete career, or probably in the complete journey in your life. So that is what I would like to say to the guys out there.
Absolutely. I think, guys, continuous improvement is so important. I'll just, we all are MBA students. You would use Excel very nicely. Sometimes, try putting this formula in an Excel sheet: 1 plus delta to the power 365. 1 plus delta to the power 365. And delta is the incremental change that you do to yourself every day. So if you put 0.01, that is 1% change every day for 365 days in a row, you would be 36 times better. Is the power of compounding, the power of continuous improvement. On the other side, if you put minus 0.01, if you kind of if you don't improve, or you kind of go to the negative side of improvement, or the other side of the spectrum, and become worse by even by 1% on a daily basis, you would go down to less than 10% of your version. So I think what you're trying to say here, Amit, is we should be trying to become the best version of ourselves and try to do that every day, right? And we would see the change at some point in time. And that is so essential.
Right.
I think great ideas, guys. And I would like to thank the panelists that, you shared amazing insights. It was a great learning experience for me as well, and a good reminder sort of to the philosophies that I imbibe and want to live by. And to the students here, you were all very positive about, you're being patient, and, you all dressed up. So I assume that you got some ideas from today's session, which will shape up your sort of journey going forward. But that said, happy to open the floor for questions. So anybody who has any question can raise their hand, and we can have 1 or 2 questions from the audience before we wrap it up. Yes, sir. Yes, Pravan.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for the session. It was a great session. So my question is that on the economic side, many people argue that we should invest in the long tail, like we should invest in the top 1 or top 10% of our products to become successful in entrepreneurship. But on the other side, marketing people believe in customer satisfaction. So they believe that we should have a diversified product so that our customers could derive satisfaction from most of the products. So what do you think is the best strategy for startup?
So I think in our team, I would put this question to Rakesh because he has worked on different variety of products and maybe he can answer that question.
Yeah, sure. I think the key thing for a startup is to find product market fit. I think it's an overused term and often we don't understand it. I think the best explanation that I have seen of product market fit is without spending money, your user base is growing without spending money. So it's very easy to grow your user base by just spending money. So how do you now get to this organic growth, which starts to show up is by constant iteration, right? So startup is constantly going through, and it may take years, right? To constantly, you do something, you show it to customers. They don't like something, you go back, change it again, show it to customers, and see if you're, what's called cohort analysis. These numbers continue to get better for you.
Okay.
Now, if you're going to do multiple products as a startup, then it's mind-boggling, right? Imagine now doing this iterative cycle with limited resources, with a lot more products. So the more focused you could be initially, I think the better it is. Amazon, for example, is a perfect example. Started only with books, and see where they are today. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think Pawan was asking more for established businesses. For established businesses, how do they kind of juggle between top 10% of the product versus the long tail? And I think here, Pawan, again, there's no right answer. You try to just, you make sure that you don't burn the house, but at the same time, don't spend too much time on a category that is not yielding too much profit. So, there in some cases, there are lost leaders. Like, if you are building a product that is not making profit, but getting your business indirectly, then you focus on that. So it's a business decision, by the way. And slowly they would discontinue the product if it's not doing a great job to build the profit table there. Yes, Gunjan Preet, please ask your question.
Hi, good evening, sir. Good evening, panelists. So, sir, my question is not directed to any specific panelist, but it is on a very general note. Sir, I wanted to ask how an underdog or a startup in its initial phases disrupt the market, since they are lacking on the funds side of the business. So, how can they do that?
Great question. As startups, I'll take the liberty to answer this question. So I think, as startups, you don't realize your advantage point. You think that you are too small, you don't have funds. Trust me, big companies have the bigger problems. Even if they have funds, they cannot do it. You know why? Because it's a company. There is a manager. There is a reporting mechanism. They cannot do it. It's difficult, generally speaking. But as a startup person, you have that intent. You have the desire, which will be a huge driving force. And unlike before, where money was not easily accessible, these days it's easy to get capital. So you talked about MVP, build your product, get it proven by the sort of show some validation from the market data, and then get the funding and then move on. So I think you should never think about yourself as an underdog. Startups by nature are meant to be disruptive by nature. Who would invest in the next, operating system, Windows operating system? You build something else, So telephones were disrupted by the Skype was disrupted by WhatsApp. Now, what will disrupt WhatsApp, for example? So you build a better model. So that is the way you should think about it. I hope that answers the question, Gunjanpreet.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Yes, we have Diptanshu.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the great session. I really enjoyed it. My question is to Ritu, ma'am. Ma'am, as you mentioned, the importance of employees' mindset which played an important role when COVID hit initially, and the ownership people took after it to ensure the smooth functioning online. What are your views on the impact that editors will make in future when most of our peers will be cobots, which will be performing the repetitive functions, and how would the ownership be divided then?
So you know what is predicted to happen, and I mean this is very early stages to sort of, but I'm really talking like a vision of the future. What I was what I was trying to give you when I talked about it earlier. So most of the tasks, and that is what we've been trying to do for the last 10 years. So tasks which are repetitive will go to robots eventually. Now, whether it's a service, even whether it's on the service side or whether it is on the production side, manufacturing side. So what humans and what particularly smart professionals would be required to do in the workplace is to really build those processes, which eventually would keep going to robots. So, that's why the cognitive skills need to be extremely high for people who are, looking to be professionals in the coming times, because the expectations are not going to be the expectations of the 90s or the 2000s that people had, which was to follow a process approach. You do your job well, you add to the sales figures, you meet your targets, overperform your targets. All that is going to become, while I don't deny that it's going to completely go away, it's going to be there. But, better professionals, or I would say excellent professionals, would be really the ones who would be able to, as I said, build newer efficiencies, new growth, help the organization move away from its core product into a more innovative side or an innovative territory. That's what is going to change in the professional world in the times to come. So professionals are we used to merit professionals on how high their pay packages were, or how much sort of business they were able, or turnover they were able to build. They might become smaller factors in times to come, and the innovation that they brought to the organization. I gave the example of Danish Oil. There was a reason. So Henrik was the CEO who was hired from Lego to bring that change in Danish Oil and made it to Ørsted. That is going to be far more valuable to an organization than just meeting sales numbers. Sales numbers is going to probably become just another process, which would continue to happen. I mean, I'm sure Dipinder at Zomato doesn't watch his numbers every day, but he's really thinking of how to move from food service to food and grocery, or probably to some other new things. I mean, it didn't even take him a drop of a hat decision to move Zomato out of international markets where they were not performing well, and rather focus their efforts on some other place. So those are the things which are going to be extremely important in times to come.
Yes, we have Shivam.
Good evening, panelists. So thank you for the wonderful session. So my question is like, how profitable is it for the startup if it is not solving any new problem? Like, and the products and the strategies of the startup are in line with some big companies who have a very high brand value.
कोई example है? You have any example? Because it's difficult to imagine a startup that is not solving a problem. And why would they be in business to begin with?
So like, for example, right now, a lot of products on beauty products are coming up. For example, competitors of Nykaa. So they are coming up in a smaller scale, but still they are coming. So how profitable is it for them to take that on?
I think, I think it's just like a coffee shop. I call them coffee shop ideas. Like, it's always easy to open a coffee shop and make some revenue. So location and all that will matter. So you will not, you cannot call it a startup per se. It is a small business. Startup by definition is about rocket speed growth. So that is a very important difference. And startup is about disruption. Startup is about failure. It's about imagining things that are not possible to do, perhaps, right? So I think at the fundamental level, I see that difference, by the way, Shivam. But I think to your point on those businesses, I think those are like, coffee shop ideas, as I call them all the time.
So Pankaj, I would disagree with you over there.
Please.
Because
Please.
I think what we're seeing today is, and I think he's quite right to ask this question. I have particularly, I think, personally, I have written about 15 startups in beauty space alone who got funded. So Thrasio is actually, looking at such business models which they can be turned around. They might only have a little difference from one to the next. And what I said earlier was that, if you are operating in a very large market, then it's a forgiving market. So even if you make mistakes over there, you might still just get 1%, 2% of the market share, and yet you will be quite big in the market from an overall perspective. Unilever has been using this formula for years on years with a great amount of success. And that is what is changing in, so, whether you talk about coffee shops or whether you talk about, so even if there's a minor difference, maybe like a 1%, 2%, 10% difference from one business idea to the next, they will all end up doing well as long as they're meeting a larger perspective. So today, I could tell that the beauty startups were only different by either they were vegan, or they were cruelty free, or they were probably Ayurveda. There is a company called Vedics, which actually gives you personalized model. Then there is a subscription-based model. All of them might have very minor differences, and product, you probably wouldn't even feel a difference. Honestly, if you ask me what is the difference between Pond's and Mamaearth, it will be very hard for me to tell you what is the real difference. But look at Pond's, which is a massive company, and then you also have a Mamaearth, which has become a unicorn. So I do feel that, as long as you're able to sort of build even a 1 to 2% difference in such a market, particularly in CPG market, you'll still be able to find your market. And there is much and enough funding happening in the market right now, and will continue at least for the next 2 years, the way I see it, in the D2C space. But of course, after that, we don't know. There might be probably NFTs might get more buck for the money.
I think, Shivam, what you should take away from this conversation is, of course, Ritu ma'am's answer is correct, or she has a point of view. People will have points of view, right? So there's no right answer. You will have to decide for yourself. So I think what I got from her message was that it's all about numbers. So if Mamaearth can show the numbers that people are willing to pay money for what they're building, then that's it. They can compete with anybody. And market is so big that, even if you capture 1%, 2% more, or if you have a slight difference, that makes a difference to the customers, I think that works out.
Well, to add to that, when it comes to consumer brands, something very interesting is happening in India right now. These mass marketed brands, FMCGs, have always relied on a very distribution heavy mass marketed business model, which would probably often go to modern trade and general trade as channels. With like explosion of e-commerce, there is also like D2C wave coming out, which is having your own channel. You're closer to the consumer. If you have a product that is innovative in India today, you can build a strong brand out of it and make it a niche by being closer to the consumer. Because you're smaller as a business, you're more digitized, and you have more information, real-time information from the market, and you have a very customized reach to the consumer. So this actually has been time and again highlighted by McKinsey. Even the stats are saying that the D2C brands are growing at a much faster rate than any of the mass marketed brands out there. And I think that's why there is so much funding activity happening with innovative consumer brands in India.
Absolutely. I think right now there's a lot of money for marketing purposes, and you don't care about the profit per se. So you just put in money and try to build a business. I think it's also important to look at, are you sustainable? Is it profitable in the short and long term, right? Those questions are, again, for the founder and for the investors to answer and see what they're comfortable with. But anyway, I think we have points of view here, and I feel that startups generally should be disruptive. That is my point of view, and they should be fast growing. But again, beauty businesses, while they look similar, there could be differences or differentiating points that could stand out, and they could still build a business out of that. So that is there. I think we have room for 2 or 3 more questions. I think we'll keep it 3 more questions. I see one from Parnil, and then we will have 2 more.
Hello, good evening, panelists. I really enjoyed the discussion, especially the advices provided by all the panelists in the end. So really looking forward to implement at least few of them. About the question, it is actually generic one and open for any of the panelists. So what could be the business practices that modern startups can adapt to ensure their agility in the fast running business environment?
Okay, I would direct this question. I mean, please, panelists, if you want to take this question, please go ahead.
So I have one answer to this, that you keep your decision making decentralized. That's usually how agility is achieved in the startup organizations. You have to take decisions at the edges.
But Ritu ma'am, उसमें एक चीज है कि you need to make sure that you have the right people at those levels. Otherwise,
but right people, you have to make the people right. They're never right people. So
that
you
is
have
also a
to
very
train
good point.
them, and you have
That
to
is
work
also
with them. So howsoever you have to pass on your culture. But I think that's
absolutely.
the only way to do it. Otherwise, you can't grow that fast.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. We always say that the founders decide the first 10 people, and then the first 10 people decide the next 100 people. So you slowly build that culture because you decentralize that decision-making process, and they kind of spread the same energy and same sort of sense to all the upcoming members. No, that is true. But any panelists want to add on to that? Please.
I think so. Yeah. For agility, I think so. The most important thing you can do is, like what most startups do, is always be in touch with your first 1,000 customers, 2,000 customers, and how you build. Like the customer feedback is really important in the initial stages and also at the later stages too. But you need to build a strong team for the customer support, so that and the main important part for that team would be to take care of all the customer queries, all the customer feedback, and understand what is lacking in your product from them, and then build over that and introduce those new features in the product based on the customer feedback. So as they say, I think so Saket and Pankaj and Ritu would agree with me, Rakesh ji would agree with me, that the first 1,000 customer feedback is really important. Even first 100 customer feedback is really important to iterate on the features in the product, to iterate on the revenue model also, and to iterate on those things.
Absolutely. I mean, Tencent Holdings is a perfect example of that. When they were actually a very Yahoo modeled company in China until they started talking to their customers, and now they're virtually in everything in China, from education to entertainment to you name it. So I think, and that really came the feedback, whatever the customer gave them, they went into those areas and started doing more on the digital side. So that's where you're right there.
Thank you. Rajat, we have one question from Rajat and then one from Ravi Shankar, and I think we'll wrap it up after that. So Rajat, you are next.
Yes, sir. Good evening, panelists. So you all have consulted various startups. So my question is, what are the main challenges nowadays startups are facing, and in which particular skills these people are lagging, so that that cause a failure in the early stages?
Anybody wants to take this question? Any panelists, please?
Yeah, I think they particularly lack in experience because sometimes some decision makings, they sort of come from a lot of experience, where things can go wrong. Obviously, while you've raised money, you have some money to burn, and you can have things going wrong for you, but you can make it right. But I think that's the biggest, and that's where, the funding and mentorship became very important. So for a startup, I think it's very important to have a good mentor in place. And, that's why a lot of professionals, senior professionals, C-level professionals I see in the industry, they are also mentors to like-minded businesses who are startups. And I think their vision and their experience really brings a lot of value to the table for a startup to avoid those mistakes, which they would otherwise do and burn a lot of money and learn from them. So I think that's the best way to do it. Otherwise, ideas are always disruptive. And disruptive ideas always take time to establish themselves. You'll probably pivot a lot of times around and around till you will sort of boil down to a certain product. So I think having a mentor from the same field is ideally very, very helpful.
That is such a wonderful point. I think we discount the value of mentors and seniors. I think we should take that. To that question, I would urge you to think why startups fail. So, there's a research done, and there are top 25 reasons why startups fail. And the number one reason why startups fail is because they build something that nobody wants. And that is why Y Combinator, which is a very famous accelerator around the world, their main sort of motto is build something that people want, right? So most startups fail. I mean, majority of startups fail because they build something that nobody is looking for. Number two reason would be because they are running out of cash. And number three would be because they don't have the right team. So I think these three are the sort of key areas that you should be very watchful of. Again, there are other things that you can look at and work on those, but team, capital management, and your product management. Like, what are you actually building for? Whom are you building for? Are they actually willing to pay? People will always say, "हाँ, हम पैसा दे देंगे आपको जब बनाओगे तो आप जाके लेके जाओ." They will never pay, right? So that is so important. When you do surveys and you always in confirmation bias. Oh, I want to hear good things. Tell me good things, and they'll tell you good things. Oh, हाँ ले लेंगे आपसे ले लेंगे. But it is so important to get that real feedback. Will you be willing to pay for this or not? And then I think we really make a decision. So those are the sort of pitfalls we should be aware of. And I think mentors and advisors will play that role to give you that advice. I think so essential to avoid those costly mistakes and also save time. Ravi, please ask a question.
Good evening, panelists. Thousands of startups bloom every year, but at the same time, most of them perishes eventually after a few years. So I want to ask, what should be few approaches that the new startups should go for us to sustain in a long run?
Okay. Please, panelists, anybody wants to answer this question? I know we all have our different perspective on this. Abhimanyu, how about you? आप बताइए, आप तो अभी बना रहे हो अपने टीम को आप.
So I would say in my case, if the organization is vision driven, that will last long, and eventually you will have problems, you will have funding problems, you will have team building problems. But if your vision is clear, if it's long term, it won't fall short of anything. It just you should be self motivated, or maybe you should have the right co-founders to make you feel that you are at the right time, you are doing the right things. It may be slow, but it will eventually happen. So I think that vision driven organization is the biggest thing. If your vision is clear, things will fall in place eventually.
Vision is neat. How about other members? Amit, what do you think?
I think if you have proven up the MVP and you are profitable from day one, you will eventually grow your journey, probably without funds or with funds.
I think this is not a necessary condition these days. You don't have to be profitable, but I think what Amit mentioned is also very key, because if you want to stay in the long sort of game for a long time, then profitability is a key metric. But I think these days people focus on the growth more. Like to date, I think Amazon is also not profitable, I think, or maybe the last year perhaps. But I would this is a very important question, because, talking about longevity of an organization, right? Because I think many startups just get started because of the sort of fad nature. Haan, karte hain. And they are putting they have multiple boats that they are on. They are doing this, they're doing that, they're doing that. So that focus is not coming, right? I think 100% all in is required, because businesses are tough to build. If it was so easy, that idea would have been pursued by somebody else anyway. You have to fall multiple times and get up multiple times, then only you get to the destination. This is the nature of business. There's no like point A to point B. Point A to point B is underground. Kafi pitfalls hain. You fall down, you get blown away, you go beyond point A, all those things happen to you. But other panelists, please give your inputs as well. I think this is so important point. Saket, what do you think? You're smiling.
I think it's important to have a plan B for when you run out of money, because that's the worst probably reason to shut down a company. When probably things are working and things are in the making, you run out of money, and if you do not have a plan B to fall on, that's one thing. And secondly, to elaborate more on the vision aspect of it, I think the process is like you start with a thought, an idea, and you revisit that idea so many times that it becomes a dream. And you dream about it so much that you see a vision, and this vision becomes a mission that could be complex, that could be quantified, milestones set together, and then it becomes an accomplishment. It's not a straight line, but probably there is a lot of back and forth revisiting each stage of that journey. But I think it trickles down from the top.
And that is any other inputs? I think this topic is so dear to my heart, always being watchful.
I have an opinion on this. I feel that most of the startups, they really perish at the stage of growth, because they are not able to manage between growth and the operations that are required to manage that growth. So, when a startup is built early stages, what is it that the founders have learned? They've learned that, you have to be penny wise for everything. You have to be frugal, and that is how you've sort of raised the boat so far. But after, you've raised funding, I think it's important, at least to some extent, maybe about 50% extent, to still keep the same mindset at the founder level. You have to be watchful where you're, because it's once you start growing, you're hiring big teams, you're taking more office space, if at all. In the pre-pandemic days, that's how things happened. So, you still have to sort of have an eye on the finance, because I think that's where things start to go completely wrong, when, the founder gets too busy with the scaling up and nobody is really looking at the finance department out there, how much burn. And suddenly then one fine day, your CFO comes up and tells you that we just have cash for 1 month, and then the growth gets left behind and everybody goes into capital raising mode again. So I think that's the most critical time in a startup's journey, to be able to have a mind on finance, because once that runs out, everything is going to fall flat. So you have to be very, very
Adding a
stingy.
perspective. Sorry.
Yeah, go on, please.
Adding a perspective to what Ritu just mentioned, I think it's important for startups to be more heavy on variable costs. If you have a lot of fixed costs on your P&L, try turning them into variable cost opportunities. That's very important to stay sustainable financially.
That is very. I'm also getting a lot of. It's, you always forget, because human mind is limited, in size. We all forget when we run businesses. I think Ritu's point is so to the spot that we all forget that finance kya chal raha hai, and suddenly you get called, oh, 6 months money is left, and what do you do now, right? And then how do you plan for capital? So, I think this could be a topic in itself, by the way, Ravi. What I would say is, people say that 3% of the startups only make it, right? There are statistics that 3% make it to the final success, but 50% startups fold in 2 years and 75% fold in 5 years. All that is there. I think what you should take away from this is, there's no harm in trying. It's okay to fail. A lot of people are failing. That should give you positivity in that sort of angle. So try it out, and you would learn by yourself, or learn, by doing it. Then, oh, this is what I made a mistake, and I should be careful about it next time. And that is the only way. You cannot learn swimming by just learning how to swim. You have to actually go in the water, and then you learn how to swim. So that is what I would leave you with. Now, on that note, we're running out of, I think, almost to the time here. So I want to thank all the panelists.
Yes, sir. So due to paucity of time, we'll be stopping the Q&A session. Thank you, panelists, for the insightful discussion. Now, I would like to call upon Divyesh Soni to present vote of thanks.
Thank you, Roop. Respected guests, faculty members, and my dear friends, a very good evening to all. It is an honor for me to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of the Indian Institute of Management, Amritsar. I, Divyesh Soni, propose a hearty vote of thanks to all the panelists for gracing this event with the presence. We would like to extend our heartfelt thanks to Professor Santosh Tiwari for guiding the Center of Entrepreneurship. We believe that this will act as a foundation stone for future collaborations. Thank you all for enlightening us with your knowledge and experience. I'm sure the students will benefit from the discussion and will reflect upon this. I also want to extend our gratitude towards the IT team for the smooth functioning of today's event. This event would not have been possible without the seamless efforts of the media and public relations cell of IIM Amritsar. And last but not the least, I thank the students of MBA 06, MBA 07, MBA HR 01, MBA BA 01, EMBA 01, PhD 01, PhD 02, EPDA, and our alumni for their constant support, patience, and engagement. Without you all, this event would not have been possible. Once again, thank you all. Thank you, panelists.
And special thanks to Pankaj. I think he did an excellent job moderating this session.
Well, my job became easy because of you all. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.